Our next guest says he has a simple solution to prevent the next disaster. If a bank is too big to fail, he says, then it should be too big to exist. Certainly a heck of a slogan. The mechanism, of course, is everything, and it's the premise behind a proposed bill by Congressman Brad Sherman. Congressman, walk us through your pudding. We're in a friendly room here. You don't have to convince us why it's a good idea. Educate us a little bit as to how it is you would go about doing it with this particular piece of legislation.
Well, we already have Dodd-Frank, which tasks the Fed and other regulators to identify those banks that are so big that if they were to fail, it would be a systemic problem for the country. The problem is, what should they do about it? They have the authority under the bill to break them up, but they're unlikely to use that authority. I believe that once you've identified an institution as too big to fail, the next step is to ask them to do what protozoa is able to do, and that is to divide in a healthy manner.
Historically, Wall Street was populated by a nice portfolio of banks that employed 100 people perhaps per bank to work on what was called the syndicate desk. And it was a location where you went to work to reach out to other bankers at other banks to share and distribute risk. And it was a way for the banks to be smaller but still cater to large corporate clients. The only apparent mathematical advantage for giant banks is for the profitability of giant banks. There is really no other apparent economic advantage in society to a big bank other than to the bank itself. Do you believe that that awareness exists in the U.S. Congress at this point, that the only beneficiary of giant banks is giant banks?
I don't know, but I do know that and frankly, I would tend to think not, but the big banks, because they're regarded by Wall Street as too big to fail, get a lower cost of capital, because they're able to say, first, look at our balance sheet. Maybe we've invested our money wisely. Maybe we have good capital. But in addition to that, loan us money even at a lower rate, because we have a safety net that the medium-sized institutions don't have. If we ever see ourselves going down, we'll call the Treasury and say, you better prop us up because we're too big to fail. If we fail, we'll take the economy with us. No bank should be able to call on Washington and say that if we don't bail them out, they're going to take the economy with them.
The primary leverage that the big banks have, as you probably know, is that the cost of everything from food to energy to basic commodities, soft commodities, corn, wheat, soy, copper, all these real centrally dependent assets, not only in our country but globally, have price stabilization in them through an insurance scheme called the credit default swap. And we are basically perpetuating that by allowing the big banks to sell the insurance with no capital. They're 100-to-1 levered still. Do you believe people in Washington, D.C. understand that the credit default swaps market is still dark, and still levered at 100-to-1?
Those who engage in credit default swaps on commodities that they don't actually use in their business are selling insurance, and they ought to be regulated insurance companies. You wouldn't allow a company with very little capital to sell fire insurance to everyone in California. Likewise, a company with modest capital shouldn't be able to write a virtually unlimited amount of credit default swaps, which are insurance instead of insurance against fire, insurance against a precipitous decline in the price of a commodity or in the price of and value of a mortgage pool.
Do you have any optimism that this issue will be resolved this decade?
This decade? Yes, I have some optimism. I think shows like yours and general public awareness the 99% is beginning to wake up, and there's simply no reason for an entity to enjoy a lower cost of capital and to be able to shift its risk from itself to a country. We should not be held hostage by a single bank being able to say they're too big to fail.
I offer a gigantic hear, not only from myself, but from the entire audience at this program, and I know many folks who have no idea we're talking who agree surely with the nature of the conversation. All the best to you, Congressman. Do keep us posted and let us know if we can give you any help. Up next here, away from the politics